Hey, this is Ben with T3 bringing you another game from the NorCal regional, and this is the top 8 match. On the left we have Noah playing Andromeda, and on the right we have Jason playing Engineering the Future. Both players kept their opening hands, and Jason drawing first click after drawing up here. I'm sure he's just looking for options. All day in the regional I saw HB, and mostly Breaker Bay Grid. Breaker Bay Grid was everywhere. It had just dropped about 2 days before this tournament, and a lot of players were dropping Eves and Adonises on it all day. Great synergy with Breaker Bay Grid resing for free, and then immediately starting to get a payout from that. But Jason just deciding to ice up and gain a little bit of that HB money. Oh, ice up both R&D and HQ and passing it. So Noah was just trying to figure out what he was going to do. Opening is pretty strong with that sure gamble and daily cast, which is going to secure his economy at least a little bit for the next couple turns here. And we do see that siphon, and oh man, Noah got exactly what he wanted to see first turn. Sure gamble, daily cast, testing, and desperado. Can't really get any better than that. And with that siphon, looks like legwork too. He's going to be looking to put quite a bit of pressure on Jason here, who's just going to keep icing up and solidify his board state. I can't really make out what Jason has in his hand, but it looks like he's trying to get one of those, or get a remote set up already, and gaining more money with hedge funds. So Jason just spending the first couple turns getting set up. Everything is iced up except for archives, and get that remote protected. So it looks like Noah was just afraid of must be afraid of an architect dropping the ferry to run right off the bat, and Noah's letting him in. So I don't think, or excuse me, and Jason letting him in. I don't really think that Jason's drawn up any agendas at this point. One ice deep is generally pretty insecure against criminals. They don't really, I haven't seen an inside job getting all too much play anymore, but you still have to respect it in most builds, and especially since criminal orders often play special order, one ice isn't really a huge threat most of the time. But we're not seeing a res on that, and Jason would have enough money to score. So below that is probably an ash. I'll bet Jason was just trying to protect it and make sure it comes up when it's actually relevant. That Turing isn't much of a... the Turing is not bad to show here right off the bat. It's still really expensive to break, and I'm sure it's worth it to... Oh, okay, so it's actually Jackson Howard, so Jason's going to start accelerating that draw a little bit. But the Turing over the remote is still a pretty safe bet to res. It's super, super taxing for anybody to get into with that extra strength, and it's a code gate. And I know this was the bane of a lot of players' existences. A lot of players also relying on net ready eyes at this tournament, comboed with Yogg. So pretty much every HB player was turning to Turing for an answer, but that was also a pretty scary card for a lot of the other, pretty scary card for most of the other fields. There was a lot of zoos running around as well. So 6 credits to break Turing, not too great there. But Jason's leaving archives open here after this turn, which is really, really surprising. You can't let criminals, especially criminals with Desperado and security testing, even though he doesn't have that data sucker, being able to get the 3 free credits a turn with absolutely no threat is pretty big. Although Noah moved the counter. Oh, okay. So moves the counter to drops the medium. So Noah's going to be putting pressure on HQ and wanted to use that, or on R&D, and wanted to use the first run to just get an extra counter on medium, since he's going to see this first card anyway on the second run. So super good play there, but the architect res is forcing Noah to get rid of the ferry. So that safety net's gone. Noah's going to need to find either, most likely a Fem. I expect he would like to get another Fem, and putting that on the remote would be pretty good here. I know it's a little bit early to start trying to figure out Fem, but criminals need to have a plan of attack, and just in case they do get locked out. And I know once you lock them out of all of the servers, their money that Noah is rolling in right now tends to dry up pretty quick. Efficiency in breakers isn't really common for criminals. It's a lot of zoos. I wouldn't be surprised if Noah was actually running a zoo. So, as I was mentioning before, for touring on the side there, it's going to cost him, I believe, 5 credits to pump and get through, which is a lot for a single ice. So, it's still a pretty big hit when you don't get the three free credits a turn. But in the meantime, Noah has pretty commanding presence, at least. Huge money lead. So probably turning off that ash that I believe is installed in the remote server, and but doesn't really have a lot of ways to get in. So I expect him to start developing that board state a little bit more. His economy's already rolling, so that's not too much of an issue, but he needs to get those breakers out ASAP. And Jason installing and gaining some money. But the architect is good over R&D. The ferry, the single-use ferry, it's still not something you want to keep running into. So that'll cover up pretty good for the moment here. And yep, here it is. Jason resing the Eve campaign at the start of his turn for free with Breaker Bakerid, which is just so good. This has changed the game in a pretty big way now, because HP just doesn't need money to start up. With Breaker Bakerid and Eve and Adonis, or even, I guess, to some degree, Eliza's Toy Box, they can just start making money for free, basically. And especially if you can res a Breaker Bakerid and a Eliza's Toy Box, you can then res whatever's in front of the Eliza's Toy Box for free. So you can safely protect that asset, that normally weighty asset, without too much of a risk. So something like Archer or Janice or Wotan or Heimdall, HP is definitely not short on big ice. And it's a heavy tax too. If the runner does decide they want to trash it, they can't leave the Breaker Bay grid either. So now, in addition to either paying 3 clicks or installing a breaker and getting in to that remote server, Noah would have to pay 7 credits to trash the Eve in the Breaker Bay, and Jason's threatening with the Architect just to bring them back. But that inside job play, yep, so here we go. I guess Noah does still play it, and hasn't long since forgotten the card, but trashing the Eve and Breaker Bay before it can really pay out for Jason is a huge play here. That's going to be a big tempo hit for Jason. I'm sure he was relying on that staying around for a little while. But Noah has answers. I saw a Special Order and a Corroder. He looks like he's drawn up in the last couple turns. So he's just going to keep holding Jason down, or keep trying to hold Jason down, and control the board state. His daily cast has run out, so he's pretty much relying on Desperado and security testing from now on to get money. So if Jason can find, and I see ice in his hand. I can't quite make it out, but if Jason installed over archives right now and made all of the runs at least cost something, it would really hurt Noah's money situation. Especially like 13 for criminals with no breakers, that's pretty low. So I would really like him to put Architect, an Architect would be super good over Archives, but really put some type of tax over Archives to bottle that up. And Noah dropping that Special Order to get the Mimic for the Architects, I'm sure. But so even still, like if Jason drops an Architect over Archives right now, it's going to cost him 4 to res, but now that run only gains Noah 1 credit. Maybe later in the game, if we see a Data Sucker coming out of Noah, or even a John Masanori, it might be worth him running Archives again, but the Architect shuts off security testing for the most part, for the immediate future anyway, and it would really slow Noah down quite a bit. But Jason coming right back with that Adonis play, which is pretty good. I'm not sure if the order of that was intentional, but having the Breaker Bay and the Eve, so Jason gains the 2 credits, and then Noah coming in and paying 7 to blow up all of that economy with the inside job. If Noah wanted to come in now with the Adonis in play, it's going to cost him 3 clicks or another trick and another 3 credits, which is reduced a little bit because of Desperado, which nets him that credit every time he makes a run. But it's still a big tax, and it's slowing Andy down with by making her waste those awesome tricks that could be used to get agendas later. But Jason just taking the turn to ice up archives and re-ice that remote, so starting to fortify and stabilize quite a bit, even though Noah hasn't really gotten any quality accesses, I would call it. Jason's board state is super, super strong, especially since Noah only has a Mimic installed. So Jason, if he has a little bit of time while that Adonis plate pays out. He doesn't want to rush into trashing it, but being able to gain money and build his board state for the next couple turns, hopefully he can draw into agendas and really threaten or at least make a push in the next few turns after Adonis money runs out. But Noah responding here, trying to get his Breaker Suite, and yeah, he does run a Zoo. So he's running the Mimic, Corroder, and Zoo for his main suite. So I'm sure we can expect to see a Data Sucker or something to make these runs even cheaper, if possible. Just because Zoo is really good in terms of it's a cheap breaker, and it's low influence and low memory, but it's really expensive, at least to break most code gates, or especially any mid to late game code gates, like I would consider Turing. Just taking a step back to analyze the board state. So if Noah tried to throw a Siphon at Jason, he could just res it and pretty much negate that. So that wouldn't be worth it. But he does have the legwork, and with Noah's money, he's probably just going to get his Corroder out from his hand to just install it and start pressuring HQ, because everything else is pretty well built up, and Noah hasn't really had a lot of accesses this turn. And yep, there's that Corroder. So instead, choosing to run R&D and bouncing off the toll booth. I'm tempted to think that was just to force a res here. That Noah was just doing that to force Jason to res, so Noah can go into HQ for cheap, or at least partially cheap. And with the Adonis about to pay out, and the Ash in that server, I think now's the time for Noah to start doing that HQ pressure. I'd have to think that this is just a scout, and he's thinking about using that legwork. Then Noah's thinking about legworking Jason, but I'm not sure here. Jason's definitely thinking about it. I'm not sure what that could be. Oh, good. Okay, so he does res the Heimdall. Eek, that's not going to be cheap for Noah at all. I bet you he's going to bounce off the Heimdall and then legwork in, because I don't think Jason's going to have enough money to res whatever's inside at 5. And Noah does click to break the brain damage and drawing into his Data Sucker, so he's almost fully up to his suite, or at least what he wants to see. And he has the memory to install it and run, but I think that's also, I believe that's also a Hades shard, or Utopia maybe, or whichever shard it is that forces the Corp to discard 2. I'm pretty sure that's what Noah has in his hand. So that could come into play. We've seen the Biotic, or at least I've seen it in Jason's hand, and I'm sure Noah expects it. But just from what I see out, seeing as none of the programs Noah plays are actually in faction for Criminal, I don't think he's going to have the influence to swap in the Clot So probably relying on things like Utopia Shard to disrupt, or yeah, I'm pretty sure it's Utopia, on Utopia Shard to disrupt the corp and hopefully force a discard of biotics or even the agendas or shipment to Sands in some cases, depending on the matchup. But it's also just great to legwork. If Noah installed the shard or installed the fragment and then legworked in right before he accesses, he can trash the shard, forcing the discard and accessing everything in the corpse hand. So he would have to make the other run in on R&D, but Noah does go for the siphon here on. I believe this is click 4, so he's doesn't think, not worried about the Scorch, no cares about the Scorch, and breaks the Heimdall. But the only thing that Noah really has to lose at this point is that security testing, and he can just clear the tags pretty early next turn. I don't think that Jason runs any sort of tag punishment either. But the Turing in front of HU, see, this is one of the things about the positional ice. I think they're pretty good, or they can be really good, but in a lot of cases, like, they're only good against the server that they get a pump from, or pretty much in every case, they're only good against the server they get a boost from. Turing just ends up as a strength 2 code gate, which is super easy to break for anything. And same thing, Miramati, I don't think I've seen anybody play at all. Gutenberg, not so great off of R&D, and I've seen Jinteki players play Crick outside of Archives, but I think a lot of that just has to do with it's a cheap ice that the runner has to break. So no one really wants that firing. But Jason did res the Eve to keep his money, and instead of taking the 3 credits that he had left, Noah just dropped the fragment there. So we'll be able to threaten that later. And man, that ability from HB is just doing so much work. Jason's installing something else over, or not over, but installing something else in the remote, gaining money, and then gaining 2 more credits. So that remote, I would assume, is probably another Breaker Bay, and that Ash, I still think, is in there. So that's just going to be used throughout the whole game as economy and a scoring remote, scoring server, since it's just so big at this point. But Noah is starting to get some momentum here now that the data sucker's in play. Although he doesn't really have any cheap runs. The Eli's costing him 4 to get through. R&D way more than that. And HQ also way more than that. So Jason wisely refortifies Archives, and it's basically going to shut off security testing in Desperado. That is not worth it anymore. Oh, and Noah getting more permanent solution for money down. Which is super good, but this is a huge scoring window. I don't know if Jason has anything in hand, but I guess he does need the money and needs the Eve to pay out, but I don't know what you do here. If Jason has any more upgrades, I don't think he plays the Caprice, since he's playing the toll booths, but I guess 2 toll booths, or if you 3 Jacksons, 2 Caprice, and a toll booth is most of your influence. You could even do 2 toll booths, or 3 if you're a madman. But with Caprice, of course. So I don't know if that's playing. Just trying to speculate here what those upgrades could be. And Noah just taking the turn to build up a little bit and dig and look for answers. I'm not sure if he's looking for more money. We've seen 2 sure gambles, a couple of, I think we've seen a dirty laundry, but that's not really going to help Noah at this point with all of the remotes. Oh, okay. So Jason installing and fast advancing out something here. Okay, so fast advancing of Vitruvius from hand. So Jason, fast advancing that Vitruvius out is really starting to put pressure and starting to crank that vice on Noah here. Although he doesn't have that much of a money lead, he does have way more money than Noah does right now, and he's going to keep gaining it with Eve. And we've already seen that Jason plays Biotic Labors, so he's just been drawing up, taking the mandatory draw every turn, so he very well could just be gaining money from Eve, archive the Biotic back in hand, and then gain some more credits, and be in a super good spot. And actually got a rare glimpse into Jason's hand there. We saw, or at least I saw a Jackson and a Biotic, and an archive memories, and I couldn't make out that ice still, but fortifying that even more. And I'm not sure if Noah has any good way to get through all this really, really taxing ice. The Katie can help, and looks like he's drawn into another siphon. Noah's drawn into another siphon in the meantime, so he could try and steal or at least steal some of Jason's money to at least boost his own economy, but that's not really going to last too long. Although the dirty laundry on archives might be worth it, at least to force the res of the archives ice and hopefully get a little money to come out. But the upside is a lot of credits for Noah here. So, Noah discarded it. Didn't actually play the dirty laundry, but I guess he is probably worried about his credit count. If Jason reses like another Heimdall or something like that, then it could be bad. So, okay. What happened here is Jason installed that card face down, and Noah stopped Jason's play to discard the fragment, and is gonna force Jason to discard 2 cards. So he's probably trying to get rid of the Biotic, and it looks like Jason's trying to do another Biotic play here. So let's see if that pans out. Installs something else in the server to overwrite that. Yeah, I think that must have worked. I think I think Jason tried to use another Biotic, and Noah must have caught it. So caught the Biotic when he forced the discard, but Jason overwrote with a Jackson to put the agenda back in archives, so it at least would have costed Noah something to try and get it. And if he did go for it, then Jason could have just popped the Jackson anyway. So that was a super good play. I'm not sure if Jason baited the discard, the fragment discard from Noah, or if Jason just happened to have that combo in hand. But really, really good play there from both sides. But Noah hasn't really gotten a lot. Okay. Okay, so he ditches the Mimic. Noah ditches the Mimic for the Fem, and is now in a great position to pressure R&D. Super good position to pressure R&D, but this is all for one access here. So Noah is getting a bunch of money, but he's playing the longer game in femming the toll booth, as opposed to femming the Heimdall or something on HQ. Because Noah has all that HQ pressure, but he just has that legwork and the siphon right now, and we've already seen one siphon get played, and I don't know if Noah runs same old thing. So we know he probably has one other siphon in addition to the one in his hand, and maybe one more legwork, but Noah's willing to forego the HQ pressure. So I feel like we're going to see some R&D interface out of Noah, and so we can really start to crank that R&D pressure and force Jason to not see agendas anymore. At least that would be really, really good, and it isn't that expensive for Noah to get in. It's basically free with Noah's data sucker as long as Noah has one data sucker, because he can just drop the architect price and make it 3. Oh, and I forgot about the medium too. So they're going through the math here, but basically what's happening is Noah security tested to get the 3 credits back that he spent running, but he actually gains no. So Noah gets the 3 and the medium counters. So he gets an extra card and an extra access, or an extra access and the money, basically for the cost of 1 run and 2 clicks on R&D. So a lot of synergies going on there. And looks like he hit a Cyberdex on that run. So purging everything, but Noah has the money right now to pay in and get the Fem. Start getting that data sucker and the medium counter again. So he can immediately start going back in and scoring a mandatory upgrades. So Jason is running, now that we've seen a little bit of his deck, Jason's definitely running a variant that I've seen a lot in SoCal, and another player who did very well in this tournament, Vicente, is running something similar to this, where it's kind of a rush Glacier style deck, where the ice in the cards allow Jason to just try and rush out agendas early, and it also carries the ability to fast advance agendas out with just Biotic, and Biotic is good for enough other things that it's worth just throwing in the deck. So Jason's basically able to constantly pressure and threaten a Scorch, or not a Scorch, threaten a fast advance, or just this type of build where he can Glacier and build up and make it way too expensive to really get into his servers and get a lot of accesses. So Noah's deck as the counter to that, I guess you could say, is trying to use Data Sucker and Medium along with Desperado and security testing to get a lot of cheap accesses and really lower the strength. And the only credits that he would like to be spending on runs are to break subroutines. So these two decks are kind of the antithesis of each other and are working counter, and it's really interesting to watch how it all plays out. Obviously, this game is pretty slow, and we do see some more influence. Jason resing that Caprice over R&D. I'm sure you would rather have that in the remote, but with the pressure from Noah, such heavy R&D pressure, he really needs to respond by protecting that server. But with Noah's decks, he doesn't want to spend all that money and is just trying to run, like a criminal usually wants to do, trying to get in and see cards. And by doing so, he gets a lot of benefits from making successful runs. So Jason's able to really push him back and kind of hold the fort a little bit and slow down the R&D accesses, slow down the remote accesses. And Noah really hasn't even been able to get into HQ that much. Even with the siphon that we've seen, it hasn't really been effective. Noah's neglected or canceled, declined his access to actually siphon, instead of access cards or installed his fragment. So Jason's deck is definitely doing its job and able to make those runs super, super taxing. And it's really hard for a deck like Noah's to kind of maintain its pace and tempo against this type of Glacier build. So Jason kind of signals here, and I haven't been able to see it, but Jason does signal that he has an agenda in hand. With the archived memories for the Biotic, he might be trying to bait Noah, and while he fortifies his position a little bit, since he did ice over HQ as well. So Noah needs to respond somehow here, but he doesn't really. Noah doesn't have a way since he's been brought down so much in credits. Just decides to kind of try and get more money. Although he does have a bunch of money on Katie, or at least 9 credits on Katie is nothing to scoff at. So he can threaten at least one run But with even with R&D, one run is 2 accesses, and I think Noah's about to, or I think Jason's about to fast advance out another agenda here. Yep, that's exactly what we see. So, fast advancing another Vitruvius out for only 6 credits, and simultaneously gaining money from that Breaker Bay and Adonis. So, really, Jason just fast advanced out 2 points for 3 credits, which says so much about this build and about Engineering the Future's ability to just constantly get money back. Even now, if Jason wanted to ice up R&D more or HQ, it only costs him 2 credits per, to put one piece of ice on top. And considering that those servers would then be 4 deep, that's not a lot of money considering how far up, how tall these servers actually are. And the Caprice pretty much shuts down that medium that Noah has, or at least brings it down to a side game. And Noah does throw the legwork here, so I'm not sure. Might be too little too late. I'm not sure if Jason has any more points in hand. But this is going to be a really expensive run.
I'll boost 4 times and break all 3. And then I'll boost break.
Well, we got. It's going to cost 4 for the Eli, 2 for Turing, and I believe 8 for the Heimdall if he breaks everything. And just to get in to see that NAPD. Oh, and Noah's taking it. So going to game point. Going to game point here, but really hurting his bank account. And he took all of his money off Katie that turn too. So gonna rely on a little bit more trickle from the daily cast to get Noah going again. But Jason's, even though he doesn't have as many points as Noah, is gonna make it really difficult for Noah to get in, or at least really expensive. I think HQ is the most, or R&D is the most attackable server, where Noah could actually get accesses, and even that's covered by a Caprice. Whereas it costs, what do we say, 12 to get into HQ. So 12 to get into HQ, or 3 plus whatever's protecting R&D plus a side game. That's not good odds, especially when Noah's only sitting on $3. So, little bit of trouble. And I think Jason has been adjusting his game. So, Jason's overwriting the Adonis, gaining a credit. That's interesting. I think he's either going to try. I think that's either a Jackson, or he's getting that agenda through with 1 credit. I'm going to have to bet that that's an agenda. That would make the most sense, because I don't think Noah can afford to credit up and get in there. Of course, pending whatever is actually protecting that remote. But based on everything we've seen, the cheapest ice that Jason's played so far is an Eli, which still costs Noah 4 credits to get through. So at best case, let's assume that there's only an Eli protecting that remote, and Noah could feasibly run click 1 or click 2. So he would have to gain money and then click through the Eli. The point is, I don't think Noah is really threatening that remote right now. So it's a huge scoring window for Jason. Let's see what that is here. So taking the mandatory draw, and Jason still does have that hedge fund he's neglected to play for the last couple turns. He hasn't really needed to with his money, so does put out the beta test. So it's a 6-6 game. Everybody's at match point, but Jason is in a clear lead here, just with so much money, and it just costs so much for Noah to actually get in and get any accesses. And it's also worth noting here that we're running really close to time. I actually think that's why Jason had to drop that accelerated beta test before the Adonis ran out, because he was trying to at least tie to try and get up to Noah just in case it comes down to tie. Comes down to time. Noah is the higher seed, so it definitely is a concern here. And Noah's trying to figure out how he can get some accesses and put a cap on this game before it comes down to time. Just taking some bucks. Counting carefully. I think he's trying to figure out if it's worth running R&D here. It does cost a data sucker token for Noah to get an access, at least to make it as cheap as possible on R&D. But oh, all right. So instead, opting to siphon here. I'm not sure why here, but no, Noah's taking the brain damage from Heimdall. But the 5 credits isn't really going to slow Jason down here. Although it does give Noah a fair stack of money. He might be going all in on trying to hit R&D now, and make Jason poor enough where he can't afford to keep doing the Caprice side games. Because really, it's just that one. It's just that one access, right? It's just Noah needs to hit the one agenda, and that's it. So Jason really has to lock down and protect R&D here, being able to bounce back from the siphon easily enough with the hedge fund. Just Caprice makes it so hard to get in here. I do know that Noah. Well, I think Noah's playing it. I know Jason is playing it in his Andromeda deck, but I saw some players using the gun, using the S&W unregistered 35 to try and kill off Caprice and Ash. And Jason just drops the card in the remote and goes for it. Even though that Caprice is down there, he's just trying to get the accesses. And it comes down to a side game. Can't say how much I've said that or seen that in the last couple weeks. It seems that Caprice is everywhere nowadays. And RP is such a big matchup. Although Jason purges the virus counters right now, which is really good. It at least makes it so Noah would only get one access, but Noah doesn't hit on that side game. So nothing going there. And again, that Breaker Bay Grid just doing work again, making the cyber decks free to purge. Even though it doesn't seem like much, that one data sucker credit alone is worth $2. Because you use the data sucker to lower Architect, so now Fem doesn't have to pay 2 to pump. So for free, you're making the runner just lose 2 credits every time. It's still super good. And Noah trying to break through Caprice, and I did just hear an alarm on I think Noah's phone. I think we might be approaching time here. So Jason installs, gaining a credit, and if this is time, if this is time, then Jason needs to have a biotic right now. The reason is like how time works is in a case like this where it's a true tie and both players have the same agenda points, and so yeah, Jason just installing 2 things actually and advancing, so that's his turn. But Noah just takes 3 and runs out. Yeah, I think they were discussing it right there. I'm pretty sure this is time, and in the case of a true tie, the highest seeded player wins. So even though Jason was about to win on his turn and seal the game with that NAPD. Because of how the time rules work, Jason never gets that turn, and Noah ends up for the high seed victory. And since this is the second round of the tournament of the top 8, Jason actually loses and gets cut from this. So it's not always the way that you want a game to come down, but it has to happen sometimes. So that's the downside of playing one of these Glacier decks. But that's all the time I have for you today. I do have more top 8 games coming. Please keep your eyes out. Thank you very much for watching, and catch you later, guys.